led them to Mount Sinai, where he gave Moses the 10 Commandments. Biblical scholars have argued for years about the location of these holy sites. Now, one man says he might have found them. Take a look.
For centuries, the belief was that Mount Sinai, the place where God gave Moses the 10 Commandments, was located in Egypt.
What if everything we've been taught about Mount Sinai is wrong? What if the real mountain isn't in Egypt at all? Saudi officials just confirmed something that could rewrite 3,000 years of history. At the base of a mountain called Jabal al-Lawz, researchers found a rock formation that perfectly matches Exodus 17:6. Moses struck a rock. Water poured out. This rock is split down the center with erosion patterns that shouldn't exist in this climate. But that's just the beginning. The inscriptions found 200 feet away are written in a language that proves someone was here during the exact time period of the Exodus, and the Saudi government knew about it decades ago. Before we reveal what they found, you need to subscribe right now so you don't miss what happens next. For centuries, tourists have been visiting a mountain in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. That's where tradition says Moses received the 10 Commandments. But there's a problem. The Bible describes Mount Sinai as being in Midian, which is modern-day Saudi Arabia, not Egypt. Exodus 3:1 places it beyond the wilderness, in the land where Moses fled after leaving Egypt. Galatians 4:25 confirms Mount Sinai is in Arabia. In 2022, Saudi officials held a press conference that changed everything. They announced the discovery of ancient structures at Jabal al-Lawz, a 8,500-foot mountain in northwestern Saudi Arabia. For the first time, they admitted what independent researchers had been saying for decades. This site contains evidence of ancient Hebrew presence. Here's what was confirmed: a massive split rock with water erosion patterns. Stone structures arranged as altars. 12 standing pillars at the mountain's base. Rock carving showing people and cattle in wilderness migration. Inscriptions in what appears to be Proto-Hebrew script. Boundary markers surrounding a specific area of the mountain. But here's where it gets suspicious. This area has been fenced off since 1952. Armed guards patrol the perimeter. Until recently, any foreigner attempting to visit was arrested. Their equipment confiscated. One Christian researcher who explored the site in the 1980s had his photographs seized by Saudi authorities. Why would they restrict access to a random mountain for 70 years? Because what's at the base of that mountain proves the Exodus wasn't a myth. The rock stands 60 feet tall, split perfectly down the middle. The crack runs from top to bottom like something struck it with impossible force. But that's not what has geologists confused. Look at the surface. Deep grooves carved into the granite, smooth channels running down both sides. This is water erosion, the kind that takes centuries of constant flowing water to create. But Jabal al-Lawz sits in one of the driest regions on Earth. Average annual rainfall is less than 2 inches. There are no springs, no underground aquifers, no natural water source that could create this pattern. Now read Exodus 17:6. Behold, I will stand before you there upon the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. The Israelites were dying of thirst in the desert. God told Moses to strike a specific rock. Water poured out. The split goes 20 feet deep. Geological surveys show no fault line, no earthquake activity that would explain this fracture. The rock itself is Precambrian granite, over 600 million years old. But the split is much younger. So what could split solid granite down the middle and cause water erosion in a desert? Here's where skeptics run into problems. The base of the rock shows different mineral composition than the surrounding area. Water saturation over long periods changes granite at a molecular level. Tests conducted in the 1990s found traces of calcium deposits, the kind left behind by evaporated water. Geologists argue rocks can split naturally through freeze-thaw cycles or thermal expansion, but those splits are jagged, irregular. They follow the weakest points in the stone. This split is vertical, symmetrical, and the erosion patterns indicate water flowed from inside the rock outward, not from rain running down the surface. Dr. Glenn Fritz, A geologist who examined the site noted something else. The water channels don't follow gravity correctly for rainfall. They originate from the split itself and spread outward in directions that only make sense if the source was internal. But the rock isn't the strangest thing at this site. 200 meters away, researchers found something that matches another part of the Exodus account word for word. And what's arranged there shouldn't exist in Saudi Arabia at all. 12 pillars, standing in a deliberate arrangement, each one roughly 6 feet tall, carved from the local rock. They form a semicircle at the base of Jabal al-Lawz, facing the mountain. Exodus 24:4 describes what Moses did after receiving God's laws. And Moses wrote all the words of the Lord, and rose up early in the morning, and built an altar under the hill, and 12 pillars, according to the 12 tribes of Israel. 12 pillars, 12 tribes, at the base of Mount Sinai. These aren't natural rock formations. Tool marks are visible on several pillars. They were shaped, positioned. The spacing between them is too uniform to be random. Archaeologists estimate they're between 3,000 and 3,500 years old, based on weathering patterns and sediment analysis. But 12 standing stones at the base of a mountain in Saudi Arabia raises an obvious question. Why would ancient Hebrews be building monuments in Arabia? Traditional archaeology places the Exodus route through the Sinai Peninsula, ending at a mountain in southern Egypt. But the Bible tells a different story. After crossing the Red Sea, the Israelites traveled 3 days into the wilderness. They didn't go south into Sinai. They went east toward Midian. Midian is Saudi Arabia. Moses lived there for 40 years before returning to Egypt. He knew the land. When God appeared to him at the burning bush, it happened at the mountain of God in Horeb. That mountain was in Midian, not Egypt. 50 meters from the 12 pillars, there's another structure, a large stone platform with burn marks. Carbon residue tests show intense, sustained fire, the kind used for burnt offerings. Around it, smaller stones are arranged in what appears to be a boundary or enclosure. Exodus 24:5 describes young men offering burnt offerings at the altar Moses built. The carbon dating on these burn marks falls within the time frame of the Exodus, somewhere between 1500 and 1400 BC. But here's where it gets disturbing. On the northern face of the mountain, carved into the rock, are images that shouldn't be there: cattle, bulls, and one figure that looks exactly like what the Israelites created when they betrayed God, the golden calf. Exodus 32 records one of the darkest moments in Israel's history. While Moses was on the mountain receiving the 10 Commandments, the people grew impatient. They demanded Aaron make them a god. He collected their gold jewelry and fashioned a calf. "These are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up out of the land of Egypt." These aren't just random animal drawings. The style matches other ancient Semitic rock art from the same period, but the location is specific. They're concentrated in one area, as if marking where something significant happened. Why would someone carve dozens of cattle images at the base of a mountain in the middle of nowhere? Unless this is where it actually happened, where the Israelites camped, where they worshipped the golden calf, where Moses came down from the mountain and found them dancing around an idol. But what's carved higher up the mountain is even more impossible to explain. The petroglyphs at the base are one thing. What's carved higher up the mountain is something else entirely. Letters, not Arabic, not any modern script. These are characters that match Proto-Hebrew and ancient Semitic writing systems used between 1500 and 1200 BC, the exact period when the Exodus would have occurred. Dr. Charles Kramalkov, a Semitic language expert, examined photographs of these inscriptions in 1998. He identified several characters consistent with Proto-Sinaitic script, the ancestor of Hebrew. One inscription contains a word that translates roughly to boundary or sacred space. The inscriptions aren't random graffiti. They're positioned at specific elevations. Some mark what appear to be territorial boundaries. Others are near cave openings. A few are clustered around flat areas that could have served as gathering spaces. But here's what makes mainstream archaeologists uncomfortable. Proto-Sinaitic script was supposedly developed by Semitic workers in Egyptian mines around 1800 BC. Finding it in Saudi Arabia, far from Egypt, challenges the accepted narrative of how writing spread in the ancient world. It suggests Hebrew-speaking people were traveling through this region much earlier than traditional history admits. One inscription, high on the mountain's eastern face, contains symbols that some researchers believe spell Yahweh, the Hebrew name for God. Carbon dating of organic material trapped in the rock crevices near these inscriptions puts them at approximately 3,400 years old. In 1978, a team led by researcher Ron Wyatt attempted to document these inscriptions. Saudi authorities arrested them within hours. Their film was confiscated. The area was immediately declared off-limits to foreigners. For the next 40 years, almost no one was allowed near these inscriptions. Why guard ancient rock carvings so aggressively? Why arrest researchers trying to photograph old symbols? Unless those symbols prove something the Saudi government didn't want the world to know in the 1970s, something that would confirm the Bible's account and challenge Islam's claim to the region's religious history. In 1952, Saudi Arabia fenced off Jabal al-Lawz. No explanation given. Locals who lived near the mountain were relocated. Foreign archaeologists who requested permits were denied without reason. Christian researchers noticed the pattern. Any proposal mentioning biblical sites was automatically rejected. Muslim archaeologists studying Islamic history had access. Western teams studying pre-Islamic Arabia were approved. But mention Moses or the Exodus, and your application disappeared. Larry Williams, an American explorer, visited the site illegally in 1988. He documented the split rock, the pillars, the inscriptions. Saudi police arrested him at the border. They confiscated every photograph, every videotape, every written note. Why such extreme measures for ancient rocks? In 2020, Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 tourism initiative changed everything. The kingdom began marketing historical sites to attract visitors. Suddenly, Jabal al-Lawz appeared on official archaeological lists. After 68 years of silence, they acknowledged what was there, but they still won't let independent researchers conduct proper excavations. Mainstream archaeology refuses to accept Jabal al-Lawz as Mount Sinai. They point to the traditional site in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, a mountain called Jabal Musa. Tourists visit it daily. Monasteries surround it. But there's a problem. Jabal Musa has no archaeological evidence, no altars, no inscriptions, no split rock. Nothing that matches the biblical description. Jabal al-Lawz has everything. So why won't they test it properly? There's one more discovery. A cave near the summit. Saudi officials won't discuss it, won't allow access. Researchers who've seen inside say what's carved on the walls